I thought I knew my husband until his phone synced to my car and shattered everything I believed about my marriage. The voicemail that played through my speakers wasn't from a client or his mother. It was from his secretary, calling him baby and thanking him for choosing her. She talked about timelines, about apartments with river views, about waiting for him to finally tell me the truth so they could start their real life together. While I was making his coffee and planning our future, he was strategically planning my replacement. But here's what Ethan Harris didn't know about the woman he married. I don't disappear quietly, and I sure as hell don't wait for anyone else's timeline. What happened next would teach him that some wives don't break. They just break free. If you're watching this story unfold, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from, because revenge is always sweeter when it's shared. The steering wheel felt cold under my hands as I turned the key. Another long day at Dr. Peterson's office was finally over. 12 hours of scheduling appointments, dealing with insurance companies, and smiling at patients who barely looked at me. My feet ached in my worn flats, and all I wanted was to get home and soak in a hot bath. I backed out of the parking space slowly. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the medical complex. Traffic would be heavy on Route 34, but I didn't mind. The drive home gave me time to think, time to breathe. As I pulled onto the main road, my phone buzzed. Without thinking, I reached for it, but then stopped. Ethan always told me not to text and drive. He was probably right. Safety first, he'd say in that careful tone he used when he thought I wasn't being smart about something. That's when I noticed the blue light on my dashboard. My car's display screen showed a familiar name. Ethan's iPhone connected. I blinked. When did that happen? Ethan had been complaining about his car being in the shop this week. Yesterday I'd given him a ride to his office downtown. He must have connected his phone to my Bluetooth system then. I didn't even know he knew how to do that. Technology wasn't exactly my strong suit, but Ethan handled all the gadgets in our house. The screen showed several notifications, text messages, a missed call, and one voicemail. I shouldn't look. It wasn't my business. Ethan deserved his privacy, even if we were married, even if we'd been together for 3 years. Some boundaries mattered, but traffic slowed to a crawl. The red light ahead stretched longer than usual. My eyes drifted back to the screen. The voicemail was from this morning, from someone named Lydia Cole. Lydia. I knew that name. She was Ethan's executive assistant, the one who answered his calls and scheduled his meetings. She'd started working for him about 6 months ago. Young, smart, efficient. Ethan mentioned her sometimes when he talked about work. Lydia organized the client dinner. Lydia booked my flight to Chicago. Lydia really understands the business. I'd met her once, briefly, when I'd stopped by Ethan's office to drop off lunch he'd forgotten. She was pretty in that polished way some women had. Perfect makeup, expensive-looking clothes, confident smile. She'd been friendly enough, but there was something in her eyes. Something that made me feel like I was interrupting something important. The light turned green. I pressed the gas pedal and tried to focus on driving. But that blue notification kept glowing in the corner of my vision. A voicemail. From his assistant. At 8:30 this morning. Maybe it was about work. Maybe there was an emergency at the office. Maybe a client needed something urgent. Ethan ran a successful software company. Important calls came at all hours. But why would she leave a voicemail? Why not just call back later? Or send a text? Traffic slowed again. The Honda in front of me had a bumper sticker that read, "Blessed Mom." The driver had 2 car seats in the back. I wondered if she was picking up her kids from daycare, if she was thinking about dinner and homework and bath time. I wasn't thinking about kids. I was thinking about that voicemail. Before I could stop myself, my finger moved toward the screen. Just a gentle touch. Just to see what was so important that his assistant needed to call before 9 in the morning. The message started playing through my car speakers. Hey, baby. I nearly slammed on the brakes. Baby? Did she just call my husband baby? I know you said to be careful about calling, but I missed hearing your voice. The woman's voice was soft, intimate. Nothing like the professional tone I'd heard that day in the office. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about the timeline. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Timeline. What timeline? I know you need to handle things carefully. I understand. But hearing you talk about finally being able to be together openly, it makes me so happy. The blood drained from my face. I pulled into the right lane, looking for somewhere to stop. Anywhere to stop. I trust you completely. I know you have to time everything perfectly. And I know Monica doesn't suspect anything. Monica. She said my name. She said my name like I was a problem to be solved. I can't wait until this part is over. Until you can finally tell her the truth and we can start our real life together. I found a parking lot next to a small strip mall. A nail salon, a Chinese restaurant, a dry cleaner. Normal places where normal people did normal things. I pulled in and put the car in park with shaking hands. The voicemail kept playing. I've been looking at apartments like you suggested. There's a beautiful place downtown close to your office. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a view of the river. I can picture us there. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. Thank you for being so patient with me. Thank you for choosing me. The message ended with a soft click. I sat in my car, engine still running, staring at the dashboard screen. The mall parking lot hummed with normal life around me. A mother pushed a stroller toward the grocery store. An elderly man walked his small dog along the sidewalk. A teenager skateboarded past, earbuds in his ears. Everyone else's life was moving forward. Mine had just stopped. I replayed the message. Then I replayed it again. Hey, baby. Our conversation yesterday. Finally being able to be together openly. I know Monica doesn't suspect anything. You can finally tell her the truth. Each word hit like a physical blow. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach twist into knots, was how natural she sounded. How comfortable. Like this wasn't new. Like they'd been having these conversations for a while. How long? How long had my husband been planning to leave me? How long had he been discussing timelines and apartments and truth-telling with his assistant? I thought about this morning. Ethan had made coffee like always. He'd kissed my forehead before leaving for work like always. He'd said, "Have a good day," like always. Had he already been planning my replacement then? I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My dark skin looked ashy under the parking lot lights. My hair was pulled back in the same simple ponytail I'd worn to work for years. I wasn't wearing much makeup. I never did on weekdays. Ethan used to say he liked my natural look. You don't need all that stuff. He'd tell me when I'd occasionally put on lipstick or mascara. You're beautiful just as you are. Was I beautiful enough now? Beautiful enough to fight for? Or was I exactly what Lydia's voice had suggested? A temporary inconvenience. Something to be handled carefully and timed perfectly? I thought about our house. The house I'd helped choose. The house where I'd planted flowers in the front yard and painted the guest bathroom a soft blue. Where I'd organized the closets and learned to cook the meals Ethan liked. Where I'd made space for his friends and his family and his work. Had he been planning to remove me from all of it? Had he been discussing replacement timelines while I was folding his laundry and preparing his dinner? My phone buzzed with a text message from Ethan. Running late tonight. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. Love you. I stared at those words on the screen. 2 words I'd heard him say thousands of times. 2 words that used to make me smile. Now they felt like lies. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Lydia was confused. Maybe she was talking about someone else. Maybe the voicemail was meant for a different person entirely. Maybe. I started the car and pulled back onto the road. Traffic had cleared, and the drive home took only 20 minutes. I used the time to think, to hope, to convince myself that what I'd heard wasn't what I thought I'd heard. But deep down, in the place where truth lives even when we don't want it to, I already knew. My husband was planning to leave me for his assistant. He was discussing timelines and apartments and truth-telling. He was being careful and patient and strategic about it. This wasn't a passionate mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness or confusion. This was a plan. A carefully thought-out plan to replace me with someone younger, prettier, and more polished. I pulled into our driveway and sat in the car for a moment. The house looked the same as always. Red brick, white shutters, the small garden I'd planted last spring. But everything felt different now. I wasn't just coming home to my house anymore. I was coming home to the place where I was being carefully and strategically erased. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I gathered my purse and walked to the front door. My key still fit in the lock. My feet still knew exactly where to step to avoid the creaky board in the hallway. My hands still knew which light switches to flip. But as I moved through the space I'd called home for 3 years, I wondered how much longer any of it would really be mine. And somewhere downtown, Lydia Cole was probably looking at apartments with hardwood floors and river views, planning a future with my husband. A future that apparently didn't include me. The house felt different when I walked inside. Everything looked the same. The gray couch we'd picked out together, the coffee table I'd found at a thrift store and refinished myself, the framed photos of our wedding day on the mantle. But now it all felt like props in someone else's play. I set my purse on the kitchen counter and stared at the space around me. This morning, I'd loaded the dishwasher and wiped down the counters. I'd left a note for Ethan about picking up his dry cleaning. I'd been a wife taking care of her home and her husband. Tonight, I felt like a stranger in my own life. The refrigerator hummed quietly. The clock on the microwave showed 6:15. Ethan wouldn't be home until late. He'd texted that he was running behind. Was he really at the office? Or was he somewhere else, making plans with Lydia? I opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents. Leftover pasta from 2 nights ago. Fresh vegetables I'd bought for a salad. Sandwich meat and cheese. Normal food for a normal life that apparently wasn't as normal as I'd thought. My phone rang. For a moment, my heart jumped. Maybe it was Ethan. Maybe he was calling to explain. Maybe this whole thing was a misunderstanding. But the caller ID showed Aunt Denise. "Hey, baby girl." Aunt Denise's warm voice filled the kitchen. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said automatically. Then I caught myself. Nothing about this day had been fine. Actually, no. Not fine at all. "What's wrong? You sound upset." I almost told her everything right then. The voicemail, the plans, the way Lydia had said my name like I was a problem to be solved. But something held me back. "Just tired," I said. "Long day at work." "Well, make sure you eat something good for dinner. Don't just grab a sandwich. You need to take care of yourself." "I will." "And Monica, if something's bothering you, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything." My throat tightened. "I know. Thank you." After we hung up, I stood in the quiet kitchen and thought about Aunt Denise's words. She'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 16. She'd been the one to teach me about standing up for myself, about recognizing when people didn't have my best interests at heart. What would she say about this situation? What would she tell me to do? I heard Ethan's key in the front door at almost 9 o'clock. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch television, when he walked in. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. He looked tired but not stressed. Not like a man carrying the weight of secret plans and hidden relationships. "Hey," I replied, not looking away from the TV screen. He kissed the top of my head as he passed. His lips felt the same as always, warm, familiar. How could they feel the same when everything else had changed? "Sorry I'm so late," he said, loosening his tie. Crazy day at the office. Back-to-back meetings, then a problem with the Johnson account that took forever to sort out. I nodded. Was he lying? Or had there really been meetings and account problems mixed in with whatever else he was doing? "Lydia stayed late to help with the paperwork," he added casually. "She's really good at organizing that stuff." Lydia. He said her name like it was nothing, like she was just an employee, not the woman planning to move into an apartment with him. "That's nice," I said. He disappeared upstairs to change clothes. I heard him moving around our bedroom, opening drawers and closing the closet door. When he came back down in sweatpants and a t-shirt, he looked like the same man I'd married. But I couldn't stop hearing Lydia's voice saying, "Thank you for choosing me." "Want to watch something together?" he asked, settling onto the couch next to me. "Sure." He flipped through channels while I studied his face. Same brown hair, same blue eyes, same easy smile. When had he decided I wasn't enough? When had he started looking at his assistant and seeing a future that didn't include me? "How about this?" He'd stopped on a cooking show. A chef was explaining how to make the perfect risotto. "Fine," I said. We sat together on the couch, just like we had hundreds of times before. But instead of feeling comfortable and connected, I felt like I was watching him through glass, like he was already gone, and I just hadn't been told yet. During a commercial break, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it quickly, then set it face down on the coffee table. "Work?" I asked. Just a reminder about tomorrow's meeting. Was it really? Or was it Lydia, texting him goodnight? Maybe sending him photos of apartments she'd looked at. Maybe telling him how much she missed him. The cooking show continued. The chef moved on to dessert, a chocolate cake with berry sauce. It looked beautiful and complicated, something I would never know how to make. "That looks good," Ethan said. I agreed, but I wasn't really watching anymore. I was thinking about the voicemail, about timelines and truth-telling, about how Lydia had sounded so sure that they had a future together. When had Ethan promised her that future? What exactly had he told her about me? About us? I thought about our wedding 3 years ago. Small ceremony, mostly his friends and family. His mother had been polite but distant. His college friends had been friendly enough, but I'd always felt like an outsider in their conversations about people and places I didn't know. Had Ethan felt like he was settling when he married me? Had he been looking for an upgrade ever since? "I'm going to bed," I said when the cooking show ended. "Already? It's not even 10. I'm tired." He nodded, already reaching for the remote. "I'll be up in a little while." I brushed my teeth and changed into pajamas. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at myself honestly. 32 years old. Pretty enough, but not stunning. Smart enough, but not brilliant. Successful enough, but not impressive. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd never been impressive enough for someone like Ethan. Maybe Lydia, with her perfect clothes and confident smile, was what he'd been looking for all along. I climbed into bed and closed my eyes. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept hearing that voicemail. Kept thinking about timelines and apartments and truth. When Ethan finally came upstairs, I pretended to be asleep. He moved quietly through his nighttime routine, trying not to wake me. Then he slipped into bed beside me. "Love you," he whispered into the dark. I lay still and silent, feeling the weight of his arm across my back, listening to his breathing slow as he fell asleep. "Love you," he'd said. The same words he'd texted me earlier. The same words he'd been saying for 3 years. But if he loved me, why was he making plans to leave me? Why was he discussing timelines with another woman? Why was he letting her look at apartments for their future together? Maybe he did love me, in his way. Maybe I was like a favorite sweater that had served its purpose but was now worn out and ready to be replaced. Comfortable. Familiar. But not special enough to keep forever. I stared at the ceiling in the dark and wondered how long I'd been living on borrowed time. How long had Ethan been planning my exit while I was planning our future? The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. Ethan was still sleeping, his face peaceful and relaxed. He looked younger when he slept, more like the man I'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. I slipped out of bed quietly and went downstairs to make coffee. The kitchen felt strange in the early morning light. Everything was exactly where I'd left it, but nothing felt like mine anymore. I was pouring my second cup when Ethan appeared, already dressed for work. "Morning," he said, kissing my cheek. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep. He poured his own coffee and added cream. We moved around each other in the kitchen like we had hundreds of times before. But now I found myself watching his every movement, looking for signs of guilt or deception. "I might be late again tonight," he said, checking his phone. "The Mitchell project is behind schedule." "Okay." He scrolled through his messages, frowning slightly. Was one of them from Lydia? Was she sending him good morning texts now? "Everything all right?" I asked. "Just work stuff. Nothing I can't handle." He finished his coffee and gathered his things. Briefcase, keys, phone. The same routine as always. "Have a good day," he said, kissing me goodbye. "You too." I watched him drive away through the kitchen window. His car disappeared around the corner, heading toward downtown, toward his office, toward Lydia. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face Dr. Peterson's office today. Couldn't pretend to be normal when everything in my life had shifted overnight. Instead, I sat in the quiet house and thought about what I knew and what I didn't know. I knew my husband was having an affair with his assistant. I knew they were making plans for a future together. I knew he was being careful about timing, trying to handle things perfectly. What I didn't know was when. When was he planning to tell me? When was he planning to leave? When had this all started? And what I really didn't know was what I was going to do about it. I could confront him, demand an explanation, fight for my marriage, or I could stay quiet. Watch, wait, see exactly how this man I'd trusted with my heart was planning to break it. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw his clothes out on the front lawn and change the locks, to call Lydia and tell her exactly what I thought of women who stole other women's husbands. But another part of me, the part that remembered Aunt Denise's lessons about dignity and strength, wanted something different. I wanted to see this through. I wanted to watch it unfold. I wanted to know exactly who my husband really was before I decided what to do next. Because if Ethan Harris thought he could carefully and quietly erase me from his life, he was about to learn something important about the woman he'd married. I wasn't going anywhere without a fight, and I wasn't going to make it easy for him. The question was, what kind of fight was I going to choose? The next few days passed like I was living underwater. Everything felt slow and muffled. I went to work, answered phones, scheduled appointments, and smiled at patients. But inside, I was watching and listening to every detail of my life with new eyes. Ethan's behavior didn't change much. He was still friendly at breakfast, still kissed me goodbye, still came home for dinner most nights. But now I noticed things I'd missed before. How he kept his phone face down during meals. How he stepped outside to take certain calls. How he mentioned Lydia's name just a little too often. Lydia suggested a new system for tracking client meetings, he'd say over dinner. Lydia found a great restaurant for the Johnson dinner, he'd mention while watching TV. Lydia really understands what our clients need, he'd add when talking about work. Each time he said her name, I felt a little piece of my heart chip away. But I kept my face calm. I nodded and asked appropriate questions and pretended I didn't know that Lydia was doing much more than organizing his schedule. On Thursday, his phone rang during dinner. He glanced at the screen and his whole face changed. Not guilty, exactly, but alert. Focused. "I need to take this," he said, already standing up. "Work emergency." He walked out to the back patio, closing the door behind him. Through the window, I could see him pacing as he talked. His free hand moved as he spoke, the way it did when he was excited about something. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see his body language. This wasn't a stressed conversation about a work crisis. This was intimate, comfortable, happy. When he came back inside, he was smiling. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just had to sort out a scheduling conflict for next week." A scheduling conflict that made him smile like that? A scheduling conflict that required 20 minutes of animated conversation. "Must have been complicated," I said. "You know how these client situations can get." I nodded and took another bite of the pasta I'd made. It tasted like cardboard, but I forced myself to swallow. Friday evening, Ethan announced he had to work late. "Big presentation Monday," he explained. "I want to make sure everything's perfect." "Do you want me to bring you dinner?" "No, that's okay. Lydia ordered pizza for the team. We'll probably be here until midnight. Pizza with the team, or dinner for two, planning their next steps." "I'll probably just go to bed early then," I said. "Good idea. You look tired lately." Did I? Or did I look like a woman whose world was crumbling while her husband planned her replacement? That night, I lay in our empty bed and stared at the ceiling. The house felt too quiet, too big, like it was already preparing itself for my absence. I thought about calling Aunt Denise, about telling her everything and asking for advice. But something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the need to handle this myself, at least for now. Or maybe it was because I was starting to form a plan of my own. Saturday morning, Ethan slept late. When he finally came downstairs, he was in a good mood. Better than I'd seen him in weeks. "Beautiful day," he said, looking out at the sunshine. "Want to do something? Maybe drive out to the lake." The lake, where we'd gone on our second date 5 years ago. Where he'd told me he thought he could fall in love with me. Where I'd felt like the luckiest woman in the world. "Sure," I said. We packed a picnic lunch and drove out to the state park. The trees were just starting to change colors, painting the hillsides in gold and red. Other couples walked the trails, holding hands and taking pictures. Ethan was attentive and affectionate. He held my hand as we walked. He pointed out interesting birds and pretty views. He spread out our blanket in a spot with a perfect view of the water. If I hadn't heard that voicemail, I would have thought we were having a perfect day. I would have felt grateful for a husband who still wanted to spend time with me, who still noticed beautiful things and wanted to share them. Instead, I wondered if this was part of his timeline. Was he being extra nice because he felt guilty? Was he trying to create good final memories before he dropped his bomb? "Remember our first time here?" he asked, unwrapping the sandwiches I'd made. "Of course." "You were wearing that yellow dress. You looked so beautiful in the sunlight." I remembered that dress. I'd worn it because yellow was supposed to be a happy color, and I'd wanted him to associate me with happiness. Had it worked? Had I made him happy? At least for a while? "You were so nervous," he continued. "You kept apologizing for everything. The sandwich being too dry, the drinks being too warm, the blanket being too small. I wanted everything to be perfect. It was perfect. You were perfect. Past tense. You were perfect, not you are perfect." "What made you choose me?" I asked suddenly. He looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you could have dated anyone. You're successful, good-looking, smart. You could have had your pick. So why me?" He was quiet for a moment, chewing his sandwich thoughtfully. "You were real," he said finally. "Authentic. You didn't play games or try to be someone else. You were just... you... were... past tense again. And now?" "What do you mean, and now?" Am I still real? Still authentic? Still just me? He reached over and took my hand. Of course. Why are you asking these questions? Because your assistant is looking at apartments for the two of you. Because you're making plans to tell me the truth about something. Because someone you work with thinks you're going to choose her over me. Just curious, I said. We finished our lunch and walked around the lake. Ethan pointed out a family of ducks and laughed when the babies tried to keep up with their mother. He seemed relaxed and genuinely happy. Was this how he was going to do it? Was he going to be the perfect husband right up until the moment he told me he was leaving? On the drive home, his phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it while we were stopped at a red light. Work? I asked. Yeah, just confirming Monday's schedule. But I caught a glimpse of the screen. The message wasn't about Monday's schedule. It was just 2 words. Miss you. And it was from Lydia. My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Busy week ahead? Probably. You know how it is. I did know. I knew that his busy week would probably include careful conversations about timelines, maybe apartment viewings, maybe more discussions about when and how to handle me. That night, I made Ethan's favorite dinner. Grilled chicken with garlic, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. I even opened a bottle of wine. What's the occasion? He asked, looking pleased. No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice. We ate by candlelight and talked about normal things. Work, the weather, a movie we might want to see. He complimented the food and poured me a second glass of wine. If someone had looked through our dining room window, they would have seen a happy couple enjoying a romantic evening at home. They wouldn't have known that the wife was studying her husband's face, memorizing the way he looked when he was lying to her. After dinner, Ethan helped me clean the dishes. We moved around the kitchen together easily, passing plates and glasses in the same dance we'd done hundreds of times. Thank you for today, he said, drying the last pan. For the lake, for dinner. It was really nice. You're welcome. He pulled me into his arms and kissed me. A real kiss, soft and warm and familiar. For a moment, I almost forgot about the voicemail and the plans and the text messages. For a moment, I was just a wife kissing her husband in their kitchen on a Saturday night. Then he pulled back and smiled at me, and I remembered that this man was planning to leave me for someone else. This man who was holding me and kissing me and telling me I was perfect was carefully timing my replacement. I love you, he said. I love you too. And the terrible thing was, both of those statements were true. He did love me, in his way. And I still loved him, even knowing what I knew. But love wasn't enough to stop what was coming. Love wasn't enough to change his timeline or make him choose me over Lydia. Love was just going to make it hurt worse when it was over. Sunday passed quietly. Ethan worked in his home office for a few hours while I did laundry and cleaned the house. Normal weekend activities for a normal couple. But tomorrow was Monday. A new week. And I had the feeling that this week was going to bring changes. I thought about the voicemail again. About Lydia's voice saying, I know you have to time everything perfectly. How much more time did I have? Days? Weeks? A month? And what was I going to do with whatever time was left? I could keep pretending I didn't know. Keep playing the role of the unsuspecting wife until Ethan decided it was time for his big revelation. Or I could take control. I could stop waiting for him to choose his moment and start choosing my own. That night, as I lay in bed listening to Ethan's steady breathing, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg him to choose me. But I wasn't going to sit passively while he planned my exit either. It was time to start planning my own timeline. And unlike Ethan's plan, mine wasn't going to be careful or patient or perfectly timed. It was going to be swift, clean, and completely on my terms. By the time Ethan Harris realized what was happening, I would already be gone. and he would finally understand that the woman he'd been planning to replace wasn't going to make it easy for him. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I was going to disappear completely. On my own schedule, in my own way, with my dignity intact. The question was, how long could I keep playing this role while I figured out my escape? Monday morning came with rain. I watched water streak down the kitchen window while Ethan got ready for work. He hummed while he shaved. Actually hummed, like a man with something to look forward to. "Umbrellas by the front door," I called to him. "Thanks, babe." He kissed my cheek before leaving, the same casual goodbye we'd shared 1,000 times. But today it felt different. Today it felt like goodbye might actually mean goodbye. I waited until his car disappeared, then called Dr. Peterson's office. "I need to take some personal time," I told Janet, the office manager. "Family emergency. Everything okay?" "I'll know more in a few days." It wasn't really a lie. My family was about to be emergency level broken, and I needed time to figure out how to handle it. I spent the morning researching apartments online. Small places, affordable on just my salary. I'd never lived alone before. I'd gone straight from Aunt Denise's house to college, then to living with Ethan after graduation. The idea scared me, but it also felt like possibility. I found 3 apartments within my budget, all available immediately. I made appointments to see them that afternoon. The first apartment was tiny but clean. The second had a view of a parking lot but decent natural light. The third sat above a small bookstore on Maple Street. It had hardwood floors and big windows and a kitchen just big enough for one person. "I'll take it," I told the landlord. "Don't you want to think about it? Discuss it with your husband." "No? I'll take it." I signed a lease for 6 months and paid the deposit with money from my savings account. The account Ethan didn't know about. The one I'd been adding to for years, putting away small amounts from my paychecks for emergencies. I guess this qualified. When I got home that evening, Ethan was already there. He was in the kitchen, looking through the mail. "How was work?" I asked. "Good. Busy. The Mitchell project is finally coming together." I nodded and started making dinner. Spaghetti with meat sauce, simple and fast. "Oh," he said, sorting through bills. "I might need to travel next week. Chicago, maybe Cleveland, some client meetings Lydia's been setting up." There it was. The business trip excuse. The perfect cover for whatever he was really planning. "How long?" I asked, stirring the sauce. "Just a couple days. 3 at most." 3 days. Was that his timeline? Was he planning to come back from his fake business trip and have the big conversation? Or was he planning not to come back at all? "Lydia's handling all the arrangements," he added. "She's really good at that stuff." Of course she was. Lydia was apparently good at lots of things, including stealing other women's husbands. We ate dinner and watched television. Ethan seemed distracted, checking his phone more than usual. During a commercial break, he stepped outside to make a call. I didn't try to listen this time. I didn't need to hear him making plans with Lydia. I was making my own plans now. The next morning, after Ethan left for work, I started packing. Not everything, just the important things. Clothes, photos, my grandmother's jewelry, books I couldn't live without. I worked methodically, room by room. I didn't take anything that was obviously ours together. I didn't touch the wedding gifts or the furniture we'd bought as a couple. I only took things that were clearly mine. By afternoon, I had 3 boxes and 2 suitcases packed. I loaded them into my car and drove them to my new apartment. The space looked even smaller with my things in it, but it felt peaceful, quiet, mine. I spent an hour arranging my clothes in the tiny closet and setting up my few dishes in the kitchen. When I was done, I sat on the floor in the empty living room and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't analyzing every word or watching for signs of deception. I was just sitting in my own space, breathing my own air, making my own decisions. It felt like freedom. Over the next 2 days, I continued the routine. Normal wife in the morning and evening, secret apartment renter during the day. I moved more of my things gradually. I didn't want to leave obvious empty spaces that Ethan might notice. Thursday evening, he came home with news. "The Chicago trip is confirmed," he said, flying out Sunday, back Wednesday. 4 days. Longer than he'd originally said. "That's quite a while," I said. "I know, but it's important. These clients could really help expand the business." Could they? Or was Lydia going with him? Was this their romantic getaway before he came home to end our marriage? "I'll miss you," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I would miss him. I would miss the man I thought he was. "I'll miss you too." Friday at work, my last day, though Dr. Peterson didn't know it yet. I gave my notice. 2 weeks? Dr. Peterson asked, looking surprised. "I'm sorry. I know it's sudden. But I need to make some changes in my life." "Is everything all right at home?" "It will be." I spent my lunch break at the bank, opening my own checking account and transferring money from our joint savings. Not all of it. Just half. What was fair? What I'd contributed over the years. Ethan might notice eventually, but probably not right away. He rarely checked the savings account. Saturday, Ethan spent the day packing for his trip. I watched him fold shirts and roll ties, the same careful routine he used for every business trip. "Need any help?" I asked. "I'm good. Thanks, though." He seemed excited, energetic, like he was packing for a vacation instead of a work trip. Maybe he was. That evening we went to dinner at Giuseppe's, our favorite Italian restaurant. Ethan ordered wine and seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. "This is nice," he said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. "We should do this more often." We should. But we wouldn't. We both knew it, even if only one of us was willing to admit it. "I've been thinking," he said, twirling pasta around his fork. "When I get back from Chicago, maybe we should take a vacation. Just the two of us, somewhere warm. A vacation, or his way of easing into a difficult conversation. A nice trip before he dropped the bomb?" "That sounds wonderful," I said. We walked home hand in hand. The night was crisp and clear, full of stars. Other couples passed us on the sidewalk, talking and laughing. Normal people living normal lives. In 12 hours, Ethan would leave for Chicago. In 13 hours, I would finish packing my things. In 14 hours, I would leave our house for the last time. He didn't know it yet, but we were both starting new chapters of our lives tomorrow. Sunday morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. I made Ethan breakfast and coffee, the same routine as always. I kissed him goodbye at the front door, told him to have a safe flight, promised to miss him. "I'll call you when I land," he said. "I'll be here." But I wouldn't be. In a few hours, here would just be an empty house with a note on the kitchen table. I watched his taxi disappear down the street, then closed the door and leaned against it. The house felt different already. Expectant. Like it was waiting for something to happen. I had 4 hours before my own departure. 4 hours to finish packing and write the letter I'd been composing in my head for days. I worked quickly, efficiently. The last of my clothes, my toiletries, my laptop, the few remaining photos that mattered to me. I left everything else exactly as it was. Let him come home to a house that looked normal but felt empty. Let him figure out slowly that I was gone. Let him call my phone and get no answer. Let him panic. Let him understand what it felt like to have someone disappear from your life without warning. At 2 o'clock, I sat at our kitchen table and wrote the letter. "Ethan, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not disappeared, just gone. There's a difference. I know about Lydia. I know about the plans and the timeline and the apartment with the river view. I know you've been carefully preparing to tell me the truth and end our marriage. I decided not to wait for your schedule. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just done. Done waiting for you to decide when my life should change. Done pretending I don't see what's happening. Done being the problem you need to solve. You can keep the house, keep the furniture, keep the life we built together. I only took what was mine to begin with. Don't try to find me. Don't call. Don't explain. We both know this has been over for a while. You just weren't ready to admit it yet. I hope you and Lydia are very happy together. I hope the apartment is everything you dreamed it would be. I hope your timing works out perfectly. As for me, I'm going to be fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm going to remember who I was before I became half of something that wasn't working. Take care of yourself, Ethan. And next time, maybe just be honest from the beginning. It would save everyone a lot of pain. Monica. I left the letter on the kitchen table, weighted down with the salt shaker, right where he would see it when he came home expecting to find his wife waiting for him. By 3 o'clock, everything was loaded in my car. I walked through the house one more time, saying goodbye to the rooms where I'd been happy and sad and hopeful and heartbroken. The living room where we'd watched movies and argued about money and made up after fights. The kitchen where I'd cooked hundreds of meals and learned to make the coffee just the way he liked it. The bedroom where we'd made love and made plans and made promises we couldn't keep. It had been a good house, a good life for a while. But it hadn't been mine. Not really. I'd been a guest in Ethan's vision of what his life should look like. A pretty accessory who fit the picture until something better came along. Well, now he could have his something better, and I could have something that was actually mine. I locked the front door and slid my key through the mail slot. No going back now. My phone rang as I was starting the car. For a moment, my heart jumped. Had Ethan changed his mind? Had he come home early? But it was Aunt Denise. Hey, baby girl, just checking in. Hey, Aunt Denise. I'm good, really good, actually. You sound different, happier. I am happier. I made some changes. Good changes? Very good changes. I'll tell you all about it soon. I'm proud of you, Monica. Whatever you did, I'm proud of you. I hung up and pulled out of the driveway for the last time. In my rearview mirror, I could see the house getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared around the corner. 3 hours later, I was settled in my new apartment with Chinese takeout and a glass of wine. My phone had 3 missed calls from Ethan. He'd landed in Chicago and was keeping his promise to check in. I didn't call him back. Instead, I sat on the floor of my empty living room and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Tomorrow, Ethan would call again. Eventually, he would come home to an empty house and find my letter. He would realize that his carefully planned timeline had been disrupted by someone else's schedule. He would probably be angry at first, then confused, maybe even hurt. But eventually, he would understand that I'd done him a favor. I'd solved his problem for him. Now he could be with Lydia without the messy complications of divorce proceedings, or difficult conversations or guilt. I'd given him exactly what he wanted, his freedom. And I'd taken exactly what I needed, mine. My phone buzzed with a text, from Ethan. Landed safely. Hotel is nice. Miss you already. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were over, even when only one person knew it yet. Outside my window, the bookstore was closing for the night. A woman locked the front door and walked to her car, probably heading home to her family or her dinner or her normal life. I envied her certainty, but I didn't envy her normal anymore. Normal was overrated. Normal was what had kept me waiting for someone else to decide my future. Extraordinary was what happened when you decided to write your own story. And tomorrow, I was going to start the first page of the rest of my life. A life where I was the main character, not a supporting player in someone else's drama. A life where I didn't have to wait for anyone else's timeline. A life that was completely, Authentically, finally mine. The rain had stopped, the stars were coming out, and Monica Harris was free.